Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight live here on Facebook and on YouTube at The Magical Solution. You know, I always have a tough time introducing myself in all of these lives, so I'm going to do that tonight. My name is Leilani, and I am the owner of The Magical Solution, and I love doing these lives. I've been booking them pretty much back-to-back every single weekend in May. I'm going to slow down in June, I promise, but I just could not help, talking to all of these fascinating, interesting people. And tonight is no different. I am so excited tonight because I'm going to be speaking to a dear friend of mine. His name is Dominick Guerriero. And I'm going to read a little bit about his bio to you because I feel like y'all need to know who he is. So here we go. Dominick Guerriero is a Babalorixa de Santo in Afro-Brazilian Candomble, a practitioner of Italian folk magic, and the co-owner of Lemuria Emporium. That's a metaphysical shop in New York City. He has over 30 years of experience as a tarot reader and now divines using the cowrie shells as a vehicle for communication with the orixas. His clients appreciate his sense of humor, his patience, and the way in which he brings down difficult information for easier understanding. I am so excited tonight because tonight we're going to be talking about a particular spirit that is not well known. Well, I wouldn't say, he's not well known. She's well known in her community, but, in terms of just kind of like worldwide and everyone knowing who the spirit is, not so well known. And I want to have this discussion with Dominick tonight to really get to know who this spirit is and her culture and where she comes from and all of her background story. So I'm super excited to bring him on. Make sure you have your questions ready. We're going to go in. So let's bring him in right now. Hey!
Hi, Leilani. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Excited about this very spicy topic.
Very spicy topic. We are going to be speaking about, I didn't say her name actually when I was doing the intro, which was kind of like a dick move on my part. So I want to say it right. Is it Pombagira or Pombagira?
Pombagira.
Nice.
Yes.
So let's get it started. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the history, because I know that she started in the Congo and then she's got like a long trip before she gets to Brazil. And so let's talk about that trip. Let's talk about her journey and what that's all about.
Okay, so as you know, Pombagira is a spirit that originates in the Congo-Angola region of Africa, and was brought over to Brazil during the colonial period when the Portuguese had colonized Angola and parts of Africa. And of course, we know the sad history of the slave trade and, the bringing of enslaved Africans over into the New World, into the Americas. And the Angola-Congo people, along with the Fon, were among the first to be brought to the New World. And then later we have like the other groups like the Igbo and the Yoruba. So Pombagira is mostly known in Brazil in the religions of Candomble, Umbanda, and the tradition of Kimbanda, which is another form of Congo spirituality. But the origins, we have to kind of go back, to the continent, and we see a very different figure from the sexy, spicy party girl, quote unquote. And she is very much more than that, but the original figure is vastly different. So within the Congo, she is a spirit of the crossroads, like the Yoruba have Eshu, they have Elegbara, Elegwa. She was originally that entity, and this entity, Fambonazila, had both male and female aspects. So there was
interesting.
So there was
she ever considered, like, I don't want to say trans, but was she ever considered like hermaphroditic, or were they two separate gender entities?
There were more two separate gender entities, but and we'll get into this later, of Bombagira's connection with the LGBT community, because she is one of those
Ooh,
spirits that kind of
so good.
encompasses, that community. Okay,
Yeah.
because of that, and it goes back to that male and female nature. So within um, the Angola tradition in Brazil, like you will hear of Pombagiro and Pombagira, and Eshum, Pombagira. So there's always that male and female counterparts. Now the original entity was more stern and more serious, and was like served only by young girls up into the age of menstruation. So like she demanded that her, or their rather, devotees were virgins and before the age of menstruation. So there was like a very strict. But when she was brought over, or when they were brought over to the New World, this kind of changed, and she became associated with more elements of society that are vastly different, like prostitution and cabarets and entertainment and all the things associated with the street, all like what we talk about today, like the spicy, sexy stuff that we're gonna bring up in the conversation. So that's like the basic origin story of Pombagira. Was brought over from the Congo into the New World, and once she got to Brazil, already we have the indigenous influence of the original natives of the area. We have the other African groups that were there from Benin, from the Yoruba, and then there's like become this mixing of traditions before the arrives of Candomblé, of Umbanda, because Umbanda came out of Candomblé as an offshoot, and then later on Kimbanda. Um, we see the European Portuguese influence, the Iberian witchcraft influence comes in, meets with Pombagira. Then we have the influence of the Romani, the Ciganos, the Gitanos, and that gets grafted on to Pombagira. And we'll specifically talk about the European roots with one very famous avatar of Pombagira, Maria Padilla. And then, of course, we have um, the meaning of the Orisha traditions from the Yoruba people. So that Pombagira kind of becomes the messenger, quote unquote, of the female Orishas, like Yemanja, like Oshun, like Oba and Oyan, and all the female divinities.
Wow.
So what we have now is kind of like a fusion of the Iberian, European, the Congo African mixed with the Yoruba, and there's even a hint of the indigenous element, because um, when you deal with like African traditional religions in the Americas, there's always a kind of interplay or an alliance between the two, between the African and indigenous.
Mm. Now that we're starting to see this coming into the American sort of framework, and Americans are also starting to look outward into the more indigenous kinds of practices, are we noticing any fusions happening there now that it's kind of...
Yes, actually.
What are some of those things? What does that look like?
It's an interesting thing because, actually, like where I have purchased a lot of Pombagira statues is not from Brazil, although I have ordered from Brazil directly, is New Orleans. There was like a lot of iconography of her, and a lot of people that practice other traditions, like ceremonial magic or Hinduism, have kind of tried to compare her to other figures like Ishtar in the Middle East, the goddess of love. Lilith, there's another one that frequently gets compared. Babylon in the chaos and the ceremonial magic traditions gets compared to Pombagira a lot. So we do see, elements of that, of trying to compare her to other things, but she basically is an entity in her own right, and she has very like specific likes and dislikes, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss that as we touch upon that topic. But you see that now because when different communities interact with each other, they try to make sense of
and make things relatable, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about, so because she's moved so much and because she's gotten so much of like a catch-all energy about her. Let's talk a little bit about like her avatars. I mean, because you see her so differently depending on where you are and her energies are so different. What are some of her avatars? What are some of the paths that you can see Pombagira as?
Okay, so basically, as I stated before, like the original Congo figure was very different than what is described in the Americas, particularly Brazil. And what had happened was this figure of Pombagira, the first interaction was with Maria Padilla or Maria Padilla, who was a famous figure in the witchcraft cult of the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal. So basically all these avatars of Pombagira, and there's like three main ones, and then there's countless others because it's believed that there's the divinity herself, the spirit from Africa, and then underneath the umbrella of Pombagira is the different paths, and they usually have names like Maria Padilla, Maria Molombo, Maria Sete Sayas, Pombagira Cigana, Pombagira do Oriente, and so forth, as these avatars get added to her, the main central figure. But the central one tends to be Maria Padilla, which is where we get the term the queen without a crown. And there's a
right. Let's talk about that. Yes, because that's in the flyer. That's in the flyer. Yeah. I loved that. When you told me the story, I was like, that's it. That's the catchphrase for the flyer. So yeah, tell us that story. Why is she considered a queen without the crown? What's up with that?
Without a crown. Okay. So the thing is, in the songs in Kimbanda and Umbanda and Candomblé, like they refer to her as the queen of Candomblé, the queen of the cabaret, the queen of the street, basically. But this has its origins in Maria Padilla. And Maria Padilla was a real historical person in the Middle Ages, in medieval Spain. And she was the mistress of the king of Spain at the time. I forget what his name was, Pedro or something else, Pedro the Cruel or something like that. And she was the actual mistress. And there's even an Italian opera about her. Okay. So even before she got to Brazil in the people's imagination, she was already famous for with witchcraft and magic. So Maria Padilla was the mistress, and Pedro had a queen who was the legal wife, but she was very weak. So Maria Padilla, as the mistress, saw that opportunity, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna really run the show here. So what she did was she had the real queen imprisoned, and she became the de facto queen of the court, even though she was not the legal wife or had the status. That's how she's the queen without the crown, because she was the one that was really running the show.
Oh, wow.
That's the queen's side. So she became this figure of the queen without a crown. And after her death, she's in a lot of invocations, a lot of spells and incantations where they invoke Barabbas, the rebel that was freed instead of Jesus. They invoke Lucifer, the devil. So that's why there's this connection to Lucifer with Pombagira and Eshu, because the element of Maria Padilla, that idea of her as kind of like a witch queen, is coming in to Brazil via Portugal and then grafting onto Pombagira. So that's like the first aspect. And Maria Padilla, as a Pombagira, kind of retains a very like aristocratic, very high class status, where she has a champagne glass. She usually has a long cigarette holder.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, so she's like always dressed to the nines, and she's considered like the messenger of the Orisha Oshun. And she's usually invoked for like things like for love, for romance, for sex, for wealth, all the things that represent luxury and status and things like that. And there's other avatars like Maria Molombo, which is connected to Yansa or Oya, where she is served at the gate of the cemetery, like Oya, and she is more associated with the cabarets and the nightlife, and also with more like where Maria Padilla is more like with the higher classes. Maria Malumbo looks after like the lower classes, like the people that are poor, the people that may not have things, but she will help them out to provide. Because her historical personage, she was a princess and she was married to a king that she didn't love, that she was in a loveless marriage, and she really wanted to marry this fisherman that lived in this hut by a river, like a one-room hut. And what she kept doing was sneaking out of the palace and visiting her lover and, dallying with him until the king found out and had them both drowned in the river. So after her death, she became a Pombagira. So she is more like that one that you go to for more like those desperate, hopeless kind of causes. So there's that, and then there's also like Pombagira Cigana with the gypsies. There is Maria Queteria, which is more like a warrior. She has a sword. And one Umbanda priestess said, like on an esoteric level, if you want to take it to another level, she said that Maria Quiteria lives in the shadow of Oshun Apara, who is a warrior aspect of Oshun.
Ooh.
So like there's different levels and understandings of this entity. So it's like, you can look at her from her origins to the different avatars to a more esoteric spiritual level to, just working with the energy to accomplish what you need to accomplish. So she has like a myriad of aspects, but those are like the major, more popular ones that have been petitioned throughout the centuries.
So when you were describing at least the three main aspects, the way that you were describing them, and I could be wrong by asking this question because she has so many other avatars that we didn't go over, but just based on the description, would she be considered an ancestral spirit because she was once alive, or would she be considered an otherworldly spirit that never had a life on this earth?
I would say the original entity was, because a lot of the Congo spirits have an ancestral origin to them, but there is that sense of an otherworldly presence too, because the insistence upon certain things, like the virgin priestesses and the very structured. But the avatars themselves would probably be more of ancestral figures because Maria Padilla was a historical person in medieval Spain. That she had walked this earth, and same thing with Maria Malombo and Siete Sayas, the Seven Skirts. Like all of them had human incarnations, but were elevated to this status. And it's the same thing with Melbourne.
So because they were once alive, and because you can somewhat consider them ancestral spirits in that sense, and I know that she is attached to very specific cultures and very specific practices. Do you have to be initiated to work with her, or can you work with her like as a non-initiate, like through Spiritismo, for example? If she shows up in your spiritual court, is that like a thing? Is that possible?
That has happened like outside, but there's still like the guidelines that have to be observed with that, because Umbanda itself is the quote-unquote espiritismo of Brazil, but structured in the form of religion, because Umbanda was basically a way of people to access the orixas without indirectly, without the blood sacrifices and protocols of Candomble. So it was a fusion of Roman Catholicism and Cardicism and Espiritismo in that sense. So she does show up in Umbanda as that kind of entity. I would advise though, like, if someone were to work with her, to talk to someone that's initiated, because she is very specific with certain protocols and the way that you have to, like, she likes red roses, the thorns have to be picked out by hand, like the dish has to be prepared a certain way. Her days are like usually Mondays, sometimes Fridays, and she likes certain colors like red and black. So she can be very picky and specific about things. And sometimes, like, a lot of people will research on the internet and be like, oh, I'm going to invoke her. Like, you have to kind of know what you're doing with dealing with her, because she can be very volatile at the same time, especially if she's not approached, the right way, and, with certain aspects than others. And also, you may have another entity in your spiritual court that kind of does that function. So by introducing her into that, it can also cause friction, between entities also.
Ooh,
So,
I love that.
it's a lot. I mean, she is receptive, I would say, to, people outside the tradition. But again, it's like handle with the lace gloves, basically. If I had to, like, use a statement.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up, people researching on the internet, right? And finding these spirits and being like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to work with them, right? So, let's kind of go down that avenue a little bit, because, when you do research on Pombagira, you see a lot of iconography. You see a lot of imagery that might remind you of things that seem harmless, or might remind you of things that are not so harmless. And I just kind of want to pick your brain on some of these icons and some of the imagery that's usually associated with it. So one of the famous ones that you usually see with her is almost like an anima sola kind of imagery. Like, you see her surrounded by fire, and she doesn't look distressed like the way an anima sola looks, but she definitely looks like she's coming from the flames, and like that whole. Is there any connection between a Pombagira and an anima sola?
They are very similar, I would say. And another spiritist told me, like, years ago, that a lot of people that practice, like, more like the Caribbean spiritism may think that an entity is a Pombagira when it's actually an anima sola. For one, because of the energy is kind of similar, because they both kind of are entities that are able to cross boundaries and deal with the elevation. There's like a Pombagira Maria Padilla das Almas, or Pombagira of the Souls, that kind of works with elevating spirits or something. And Anima Sola has a connection to that kind of work. Also, the iconography is similar, with the imagery of the fires, and sometimes Pombagira has like this diabolical image, where she's like the sexy girl with the horns and everything.
Yeah.
And that is the connection with Maria Padilla, being the wife of, quote unquote, Lucifer. And there is an Eshu Lucifer, but the Eshu Lucifer is not the Christian Satan or the devil. He's just like the king of the Eshu. And Maria Padilla is considered his, quote unquote, wife. Now, there's an interesting song and this is an oral tradition that was passed down to me, and it goes like, the song is, I'll sing it in Portuguese and I'll translate it in English. It goes,
oh yes.
It's a little spicy. It goes, sete de mais sete de mais sete 21. Pombagira tem sete maridas e ne gusta ningún. So it's being 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21. So you see that connection to Ashu with the 7s and the 3s and 21. Pombagira has 7 husbands, but doesn't like a 1. It's a little tongue in cheek. Yeah. On a spiritual level, technically, all those husbands of Pombagira are all aspects of Eshu. So it's not like she's being trifling and she's cheating on him and with the different guys. It's just that each of her female aspects has a male counterpart. So for every Pombagira, there's an Eshu. So that iconography relates to that connection with Maria Padilla, and the connection of, Maria Padilla is called the queen of hell, the wife of Lucifer. So the hell, the flames and everything fits with that. Also in Lucumi, in Santeria, in Cuban Santeria, there is a Camino of El Egua that's connected to Anima Sola, I think is Alaguana, correct me if I'm wrong. And the imagery is syncretized with Anima Sola. So you can kind of find like parallels in these figures with Anima Sola, with Pombagira, and so forth.
Interesting. That is crazy. So I love that. I love that so much. So So I want to kind of put it to the audience a little bit. Apparently, we have a lot of people who work with Pombagira in the comments right now, just going off. And it's funny because as they're commenting, you're talking about it just right after they say something, and it's like perfect.
Guess we answered some questions.
You did. They were. It's pretty amazing. So there was a question though. I want to go back because there was a question that I saw that was really, really good. Oh, thank you for my hair. I appreciate you. So one of the, I can't find it, so I'm gonna have to just, sorry, I'll get back to it at some point. So another imagery that I found with her, and again, this is why I asked the question earlier in the video about her possibly being like a hermaphrodite or something, because some of the imagery I've seen was like, you know, she does look red, like almost like a devil, but she'll have a breast and a penis. And so, or like she'll have like the fire with the breast and the penis. And so like, I'm curious, so you're saying no, that that's not the case, but what would that imagery represent? Like why would they represent her like that?
If you're familiar with Hinduism, you know, like you see like Parvati and Shiva sometimes fused as one.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So I've seen like, you know, half face Eshu, half face Pombagira in some cases. So it's basically like saying like that, you know, Pombagira has the male and the female aspect. Now, in terms of LGBT community, Pombagira is kind of like one of the unofficial patrons, and there's many figures associated with the LGBT community, like the Orisha Oshumare, the serpent in the rainbow. Like my own Orisha, Laguna Day, has a male and a female aspect. So there's a lot of iconography and figures within the Afro-Brazilian traditions that makes it accessible and open to the LGBT community to express themselves. And also, Pombagira is kind of like other entities, like Santísima Muerte is a popular one that's gaining popularity in the United States outside of her community. In that the fact that she kind of accepts you for who you are. Like basically Pombagira is like something where they're like that, come as you are. You know, I don't care what your gender is, your sexuality, your past history, what you may involved with legally or illegally. I will answer your petition if you approach me the right way. You know, so there is that idea of acceptance and inclusivity with her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, guys. We literally, aside from my very last question, which you kind of answered a little bit throughout the conversation, we literally banged it out in a half hour. Like, I can't believe it. So if you guys have more questions, by all means, throw them in. We would love to address them. This is from Casa de la Lázaro. Being a stereotype sexual worker allows her. Ooh, damn, they're going so fast, y'all. Hold on. Allows her to say things a certain way that brings a certain proximity to the consultant.
That is very true. There's various like that. Pombagira was the good sister, Maria Padilla was the bad sister, and Eshu was their brother, and then Eshu was like abusing the sisters, and then one of them, I forget, Pombagira, she became a prostitute to kind of provide for the family and so forth. These are all like legends that grew up around the different avatars, and then Maria Padilla became like the madam of the brothel or something, and then somehow made a pact with Lucifer and became the queen of hell in the underworld. And there was a conflict with her and Pombagira and the brother and so forth. And you see like with the different Pombagiras, like some of them, like Marapetia, there's more of like this high, or Eshu Lucifer, there's more like this high class kind of speech. And then with some of them, there's almost this vulgarity of where they will basically tell your business out in front of like, gathering, like, yes, I know what you did last night and I know who you did it with. And you're like, because spirits kind of they can manifest as very raw and very vulgar in some cases, And then sometimes, depending on the aspect, that they don't. So there is this connection with Pombagira with sex workers and prostitutes, and the cabarets and the lounge singers and the whole element of nightlife in society. Um, and that that goes to the thing where she is more inclusive of people that may not fit in to quote unquote society, that she is accepting of it.
Mm. Nice. Let's see. Marius is asking, so we did answer this a little bit earlier, but I'm sure we'll just address it really quickly. The question was, does she accept traditions from people that are outside of the traditions associated with her? People who have no Afro-Caribbean or Latin ancestry. Okay, so this one is slightly different. So I think it's more about if you're not Afro-Caribbean or if you're not Latin in your own ancestry, even if you're initiated, will she listen to your petitions and your workings? Like, does your race and your culture have anything to do with working with her?
Well, the thing with Pombagira is we get like the original spirit has that Congo Angola origin, but the different avatars come from different places, like the Romani, the Gypsy, who originally from the Indian subcontinent. There's Maria Padilla, who's clearly a European, Iberian, figure. So I would say that race and when you're dealing with the avatars, like the race and culture may not be a factor in that case, but there's still the protocol has to be observed in how she is approached and what to give her, like in terms of like the offerings and the way that it's prepared. It has to be very specific, because you give her the roses with the thorns. So she could be very nitpicky about certain things.
Gotcha.
She likes her champagne and her whiskey, and those kind of things.
I love it.
Like she's not in non-alcoholic drinks.
I have a question here. This seems like I don't know what this means, and I'm curious to see what your answer is. So, can you speak to the characteristics that certain Pombagiras and Eshu devotees portray? Like, say you are a daughter of Cigana, what attributes would you portray that says that spirit walks with you? Ooh, that's a deep question.
That is a good question. See, it's from India Brown. Okay, so a lot of times, and I say this because I'm an issue of Candomble, and there's people that work with her in more of an Umbanda or Kimbanda context. Okay, so like from a Candomble perspective, like the Pombagiras and Eshus are connected to Orisha. So I would say 9 times out of 10 that who your Orisha is kind of reflects what the Pombagira and Eshu is. So for me, for example, for myself, I'm a child of Lugunidi, my mother is Oshune Ponda, the wife of Ochosi. So my Pombagira is Sete Sayas, the 7 skirts. So Sete Sayas is the messenger of Oshun and Oya. And also for me, Lugunidi has a big connection with Oya. Oya was the actual Orisha that had raised him as a child. So daughters of Oya and me are like, number one. Like, and I'm gonna get to that in a second because I have a story with a Pombagira and a daughter of Oya. And so I noticed that sometimes the children of Oya will have Maria Malombo as their patron, or as a Pombagira that works with them. So I would say if you're a daughter of Pombagira Cigana, okay, and mind you, the Cigano are their own line or phalanx in Umbanda. So there's like 7 different lines. Each Orisha governs a line in Umbanda. Like Ochosi has the Native Americans. Shango usually has like what they call, and these are like old archaic terms, like the Oriental Magi, like the
Far East.
The Far East and things like that, and then Oshala or Batala governs like the line of the saints, which is the Catholic saints. So the Ciganos have their own separate line within Umbanda and within Kimbanda. So they're considered their own kind of kingdom. But the Pombagira would be like the message, like the representative of that kingdom.
So I'm glad that you're bringing this up because I think that that really needs to be clarified for some people. So you cannot be a daughter of Pombagira. Pombagira is the messenger of the orixas that you can be a child of.
Yeah.
At least in one definition, in one way.
In one definition. And again, like it all depends on the context that
it's in, right?
And everything. Because Kimbanda has a separate context outside of Candomblé. Like in some Kimbanda houses, they have kind of taken the Orisha element out. And some of like the Candomblé and Umbanda practitioners are like, God, clutch the pearls. Like, how could you, like divorce that? But I mean, again, it's a different context in which the entity is being accessed. So yeah, I mean, unless you are like you are crowned Eshu, let's say the Orisha, there may be some kind of thing with Pombagira. Because to get into that, before I go into that nice story about the Oya child, a lot of times what happens in Brazil is when someone moves from one nation of Candomblé to another, or if they start out in Umbanda and pass the Candomblé, or they have to take what they were initiated with into the house, and that causes conflict sometimes, especially with the more Yoruba-based Candomblés that are very like, when they see things that are related to Espiritismo or the dead, they're like, we don't do that. They stay very traditional with the Egungun cult, which is brought directly over from Nigeria, from the Yoruba. So, but the problem is that when the initiate brings that Pombagira from their previous background, that entity has to be placated.
Like integrated somehow.
Yeah, integrated. So they talk about in a lot of Yoruba-based Candomblé houses, when someone brings Pombagira in, that they have to do a separate ceremony and basically make almost like a female Eshu in the Orisha sense to kind of smooth the transition. So whereas like in Umbanda, you might not see that. Someone might just have like a statue of her and altar and so forth, without the blood sacrifices, because it is a separate religion from Candomblé, even though the roots are there. So there is that. But in terms of the Oya story that I have, so I have this friend that she had a botanica in Spanish Harlem back in the day, and Pombagira came out for her somehow, and it was Maria Malombo, and she was the daughter of Oya in Lukumi Santeria. And so at the time, my Pai de Santo, my godfather, had a botanica here in Queens, Santa Barbara in Jackson Heights, and he sold the statues from Brazil. So she heard that he was selling the statues, and when I met her, she's like, "Oh, I think I know your Pai de Santo. I went to him years ago. I bought a statue of Pombagira Maria Malombo, and he probably thought it was a prostitute because I was buying." And I was like, "No, my dear, I don't think he thought that, because even though Pombagira has an association with it, I don't think he thought you were a prostitute." And she said it with like that very like thick Puerto Rican Bronx accent. Like, "Oh my God, he probably thought it was a prostitute or something like that." I'm here. And I'm laughing because I had seen the statue of Pombagira that she had. And so you see like how she kind of has somewhat moved outside of the tradition and the culture that she's in, but the context is still there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
I have a question here. I can't. The comments are happening so friggin' fast, man. I wish you could see. But there was a question way back when that asked, would Pombagira be angry with me or not want to work with me if I'm a man? So I don't know if that would be a thing. I mean, she seems very open to everyone, including different genders.
I would say that she is open to all genders, to all sexual identities, to all social classes, and so forth.
Yeah, so I don't think that would be an issue. Another person had mentioned, another person had mentioned, this was back when we were having the discussion. This was back when we were having the discussion about when spirits walk with you, that you tend to take on certain characteristics of them. And one person had commented that she turns you into a hoe.
Okay,
I'm sorry. That's like super. I'm pretty sure that that's super insulting. But just to ask, you know, is there? Do you become a little bit more sexual? Do you become a little bit more like stuff?
Well, personally speaking, in my interactions with her and working in cleansings and all that, I have noticed that people tend to notice you more when you embody aspects of that energy. So that may manifest as more dates, that may manifest as attention from your significant other, that may manifest in other activities, depending upon how you utilize that energy. But I feel since she is the spirit of the crossroads and opening, if that is your intention, okay, and like I said, she has this idea of like the no judgment zone in terms of that kind of stuff, that I wouldn't say she turns you into a hoe, but it's kind of like with the Santa. I was like, oh my god, he thought it was a prostitute. I would say that your attention and the opportunities for certain things will increase.
Got you. Okay, like, almost like
she does open those roads for that, because that is
a highlighter on your spirit. She puts a highlighter on your spirit.
You know, so like let's say you do something with her, and you know your friend is like, "Oh, let's go to this new club or something." You may turn heads. You know, you may get a few proposals, and you know people buying you drinks. You know, so I would say just go with it, enjoy it.
Just go for the ride. That sounds awesome. So we also had another question. I believe it was from your spiritual wife. I'm not sure, because she's calling you your business husband. She's saying that you're your business husband. But she said, who is your favorite Pombagira? Who's your favorite avatar of all?
I want to say hers, because if I don't say that.
Is that why she asked you? It was a trick question.
I want to say hers, you know, because hers is very interesting, you know, and I have to be careful with her too, because if not, she will spill my business in front of everyone. But I find all of them fascinating. I do have to say that like the Maria Quitoria one was interesting because she was based on a revolutionary in Brazil, and she carries a knife, so she's like a little, I call her the assassin, you know. So it's like, you know, she's the type that, like, you know, when people are messing with you, she sneaks behind the enemy lines and sabotages, you know, them. And it's interesting that the Umbanda priestess had said that she lives in the shadow of Oshun.
I love that.
So like that's like that kind of like blew my mind a little bit when I heard that, because like to her hear like the spirit described on an esoteric level. But I also like, I do like, you know, Maria Malombo is brings the party, you know, for like I said, the daughters of Oyami are like this. So that's something I would say as a child of Laguna, the daughters of Oyami will probably kill someone for me. It's just part of the territory. Whereas daughters of Oshun and children of Oshun tend to treat me like I'm like the younger brother or something like that, or the child. So it's the energy of Laguna. But Maria Padilla herself too is very fascinating, because there's so many stories and so many legends, as a historical figure and as a Pombagira. You know, like I said, there's an Italian opera about her. Forget who the composer is. So like even before she entered into the sphere, the orbit of Pombagira, she was already kind of famous for who she was, and it just kind of like added to that mythos.
Yeah.
So, but I find like all the stories are, you know, they were very fascinating. I believe there's another one called Rosa Caviera, which is like a Pombagira that's more associated with the cemetery and the dead. So like there's different aspects. There's even one like associated with Yamanja. I think she's called Beramar or something like that, where she's like, she lives by the beach and everything, and she's more like a sexy siren. So this,
Nice.
so there's different aspects depending upon where in nature or where in town, like if we're talking about the cemetery or the cabaret, you're going to encounter that energy. You know,
I'm noticing a couple people too are curious. So because she has so many different avatars and because she's been adapted in so many different cultures and she actually governs so many different areas of life, like you can call upon her for a lot of different areas of life. Although, like you said, you know, she is most notably known for like the love and like that kind of stuff. Is she also known for like the opposite of that? So, like, for example, if you're in an abusive relationship, domestic violence, if you are having self-esteem issues as a woman or as someone with your sexuality, can she also help, like, relieve those things and not just bring them, but relieve them and heal them?
I would say yes, and it's actually based on that one of the original stories of Pombagira and Maria Padilla in the Afro-Brazilian context. That said that Pombagira and Maria Padilla were sisters in Brazil, and that the older brother, I think his original name was Manuel, and then he became an Eshu, was abusing them. I don't know, either physically or sexually, and they both had escaped him, and that one became a prostitute to kind of as a way of getting out of that, you know, and becoming a madam and having that wealth for herself. But it was that the brother had found her and was attacking her, and then she stabbed him 7 times.
Woo!
Yeah, so there's that.
Yes.
Violent. So I would say that yes, like she can be called on for protection from violence and abuse, because that is part of the stories of how she used her wealth and her power to escape an abusive situation, and that the other sister came after her because in the story, I think when she stabs the brother's jealous girlfriend comes to the brothel and stabs her 7 times. So it's like that the number 7 again, the 7 husbands, the 7 lines, the 7 kingdoms of Kimbanda are esoterically in play. And the good sister Pombagira, like she seeks the spirit of Maria Padilla. Maria Padilla in the story drags her into the underworld, kind of like Persephone. Like so, there is that underworld queen kind of aspect.
Kind of like a Persephone. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I don't know who this person is, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. Is she similar to Kachita Tumbo?
Cachita
You know who that is?
Okay, yes, that's Stephen. So he's talking about a Taino deity, Cachita Tumbao. And I would say this, and Dominicans don't get mad at me. If I had to compare a Loa or a Taino-based deity, I would say Anaisa, because Anaisa does have different, like Pombagira, she has an African root, she has a indigenous root from the Taino queen Anakarina, and Anaisa is kind of associated with more of the sensual aspects, you know?
Gotcha. Apparently there's 2. He had verified that there's 2 aspects of that.
Chita I know is like a Taino deity of the river and sensuality that's associated with Oshun, but kind of has like this very spicy side and everything. So I could say there are similarities between the 2, but if I had to compare and contrast, I would say Anaisa has similar attributes, you know, with the beer in the champagne glass and the smoke of the cigarettes, you know. And sometimes she could be vulgar too, and she could be her speech could be classy or vulgar depending upon who she's addressing and what aspect, what vuelta, I believe that's the word in Spanish, what camino is being accessed.
When you, and this is not to pry because I'm getting the question. I'm getting 2 questions that I feel are really relevant. So this is not to pry on the practices of the initiated who work with her, but there is some curiosity on how you end up finding out which Pombagira walks with you. Do you find that out during the initiatory process, or is there like a separate reading that you can get done to find out who that is?
So from the Umbanda context, okay, they do sometimes read bucios like in Candomblé, depending upon how African influenced the house is. But a lot of times they will discover their entities, the native spirits, the Pombagiras, the gypsies. They will come out in the sessions, in the spiritual sessions. They will either mount the person or they will reveal themselves. So I have seen that, and there's an Umbanda group here in Queens that, you know, I go to sometimes, you know, to support the community. In Candomblé, because we have the more orthodox approach, it's generally via like the oracle of the bucios, but like the Pombagiras kind of have their own, and the Egun have their own separate kind of shells that are distinct from what the orixas have.
Gotcha.
So the way that we approach her is slightly more ceremonial and more more sacrifice based, I would say, than Umbanda, which is more of the espiritismo nature. So and both of these approaches are correct. It's just that one religion is accessing it from one context and the other religion is doing it from another.
Gotcha.
So,
and what about the colors?
What you feel comfortable with.
And what about the colors? We normally see her in the red and black, kind of like the same colors as Eshu. Like, is she ever shown in other colors, or is that pretty much where she's at?
Basically, red and black. Sete Sayas has skirts of the rainbow, like 7 colors. Pombagira, what is her name? Menina, which means like teenager or girl, like my niña, it would be in Spanish. So Pombagira Menina sometimes will manifest in pink and black because she has like a softer. So she's a very interesting Pombagira too, because she is more of a Pombagira you would go to when you want that romantic kind of love, because she's very sweet and innocent-ish. Because she can be mischievous in her own way, and she generally tends to like the softer champagnes and apple cider kind of drinks, the bubbly stuff, compared to the hard liquor and the whiskey that some of the other ladies like. So there is her, and the way that when she manifests in the possession is generally more smoother and more like a younger girl, like a teenage girl dancing, and it has more of a sweet kind of vibe to it.
Gotcha.
You know, so sometimes you have those colors, like more of that pinkish kind of color with her.
Gotcha. So we are getting requests for you to come back and do another live.
Okay.
So do you remember the subject that we were going to do originally?
What, the like Candomblé, Umbanda, Kimbanda?
No, the Italian magic and the Italian the strega and all that. Yeah. I think people want to hear more from you. So why not talk about something completely motherfucking different? Just like way left. Just let's go all the way over here. Let's talk about something else. How are you feeling about that? You want to do that next month?
I'm open to it.
Yes? Okay. I'm feeling it.
You know, a Pombagira's question is gonna sneak in, and I don't mind, you know, because that's how she is. She kind of insinuates herself into many situations.
You know what? I love it. The one thing I love about just doing these lives is just getting to know people on a personal level, having free-flowing chats, and letting things just flow as they flow. And like you had said, she can become a little like possessive, like a little like I want to be all up in the spotlight, and so hey, if she wants to, all good. So I think if you give me the green light, I think Italian magic, folk magic, strega, stregania, all that, I think is a good topic for next month.
I'll bring my Italian friend drum to that one.
Yes!
You know?
Yes. All right, y'all. So thank you guys so much. Now, Dominique, tell us how people can reach you, what websites you got going on, what else you got going on, if there is anything else. Talk to us.
Yeah. So as of June 1st, we will open the shop Lemuria Emporium, which is in Richmond Hill, Queens, by the J train. So for you Brooklyn and Queens people, like it's easy to access. We're also not that far from the Long Island Railroad. So we have that. And also my personal page is tarotvoyages.com. And you could like book, a reading for, Pombagira and Eshu to see, if they walk with you and so forth. So I have that service available. Yeah, basically from those you can either see me in person at the store, you can, talk to me online or by phone, or, in this day and age, Zoom. Like,
you know what? Hold on. Before we let you go, because we got 4 minutes left, we might as well answer another question.
Yeah, sure.
There's a few people saying things about how she comes to heal and protect and remove demons, that she can get rid of negative entities and guard the Terero. I think it's what
Terero, yeah.
Is that so? Is that true? Is that one of her avatars? Is that one of the things that she does?
That is something because she's that liminal figure of the crossroads and the barrier between worlds and the doorway, like Eshu, like Bara, that she does have that power of guardianship, and protection. So that is an aspect of her, like as a, usually in most Candomble Tereros or Umbanda Tereros, like they usually have something for Eshu or Pombagira outside, like the first thing, you see when you walk in. And then after that, there's usually an area for like the native indigenous spirits. It's kind of homage, to the original inhabitants of this land that we live on.
Gotcha.
She does have, and that's a very interesting observation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you were able to kind of sneak that in towards the end, because it's true. Like I want to get to everyone's questions, but like they were coming in hard body, man. So when this posts, you're gonna have to go in and read all of them and answer them. I don't know. But if you guys have more questions about Pombagira, if you guys want to know more, he listed all of his social media sites and how to get to him. Do you have a YouTube channel? Someone wants to know.
We don't have a YouTube channel yet. It's just something in the work. I do have Instagram.
Okay.
So it's the same name as the website, Tarot Voyages. So you can find me on IG. I do have like a separate Orisha one that I'm working on. It's called Orisha with the X, Inspirations. So that's another one, but they're all kind of like connected on the same. So if you find one, you more likely will find another.
Awesome. I'll make sure to post. I'll make sure to put all your links down below so that people can get to you.
I would be happy to answer. I know as I've been getting some friend requests. But that's that Pombagira. She opens up those doorways, and you never know, meeting new friends and connections, what opportunities or situations arise from that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I think that's part of her energy,
Yeah.
She might not turn into a hole though.
So Dominick, I just want to thank you so much for saying yes to me, for doing this with me, for saying yes to possibly a second one. Obviously you were well received. People loved you and definitely are requesting you to come back. So I hope we will do this again. And I appreciate you so much. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, it was, and I think it was an honor, Liloni, and this was a fun topic too.
It was. I'm glad you picked it. It was a good one. All right, y'all. Listen, thank you so much. Continue putting the comments. Continue putting the questions in there. I will try my best to read them and send them over to Dominick, and we will keep going. Stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm going to be doing another live with Reina George on Lenormand and divination. So tune in for that. Again, Dominick, thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a beautiful night. Everyone have a beautiful night. Talk to you soon. Magical Solutions.